everyone and welcome to Coffee with Roelof. Hi everyone and welcome to Coffee with Roelof. Coffee with Roelof. Coffee with Roelof. Hi everyone and welcome to this special edition of Coffee with Roelof. In a video that I did previously, I made the promise that I will discuss meetings. Now today is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually going to read off a presentation that I normally present when I talk about meetings and how to solve this massive amount of meetings that we go through and why they actually exist. You see, it's not the reason you think it is, and it only happens once you do a really intense investigation or root cause analysis that you realize where the actual reasons lie for all these meetings that we're having. So I am going to read off a presentation, which I normally don't do. I normally don't read anything. When I do Coffee with Roelof, it's just a normal discussion and a chat that I've got, but this time it will be different. Right, so to get started with, I've got a presentation in front of me and I'm going to read through it and hopefully it will make sense to you. Right, so we're going to talk about meetings and why management and control is wasting time and money with meetings. So to get to the point where you are in the same frame of mind of where I am, I'm going to try and transition your thoughts or take it through a process so that you understand where everything comes from. Historically, organizations come from a management and control environment, and especially from a project view, organizations are structured to have constant meetings. Now, to get through the process and to understand where we're going with this, I'm going to start with something called the SDLC. Now, everybody should be familiar with software development lifecycle, the SDLC. So I'm going to just give you an idea of one of the ways that it presents itself. So SDLC has different kinds of forms depending on organization's governance, but this one is just an example. So normally you've got a flow of work that needs to happen. So for example, you'll document requirements, you'll do a design phase, then you'll develop, you'll test, deploy, and then you've got some kind of maintain process. Now, software development lifecycle, the SDLC, by definition, if you go and research it, it says the software development lifecycle is the cost-effective and time-efficient process that development teams use to design and build high-quality software. The goal of SDLC is to minimize project risk through forward planning so that software meets customers' expectations during production and beyond. Now, it's a very wonderful definition. The problem is, I'm asking, is it cost effective? Is it time efficient? Does it really minimize project risk? Does it really deliver high quality software? And next one is it actually a life cycle? The life cycle part is part of the name, but I kind of disagree that it is a life cycle because it doesn't have a cycle. It has beginning and end, boom, you're done, and it does it. It's a typical project definition. So what was SDLC? And I'm going to say was because majority of organizations have moved on into the modern world when it comes to methodologies. So SDLC in high level, if you wanted to execute it, you had a current state analysis that you had to do, and for that you needed to do future state analysis. Then you would do a gap analysis, and the gap analysis will then determine basically your business case and what funding you will request for this project. This was normally done by the business owner, a sponsor, the project manager if he was appointed already, solution architect, and some SMEs. But these were normally the people involved with the starting or the kicking off of a SDLC project. The next step would be the funding would be approved. You would have detailed requirement gathering, detailed design, and then you've got some kind of execution phase, and then you will have quarterly releases depending on the size, of course, of this initiative, and then you would have a month warranty or maintenance or something like that. But here's the thing about SDLC and why it is and was a failure. SDLC creates an entire kingdom that's being built around it, which makes it very expensive. It also requires a hell of a lot of meetings. If you look at the organigram, and I'm going to get to that later in the presentation, it's insane just how many meetings it requires. And the meetings is not required for the delivery, as you might think. It is actually required for management and control. And that became part of the DNA of organizations. This whole meetings in order to manage and control. It also created a massive amount of dependencies. You had historically the changes, and if you look at, for example, the chaos report, very little of projects actually succeeded. And if you look at it beyond the definitions of people that say, okay, but there was a change request or two, we had to do X, Y, Z to just adapt to the information or newfound information or whatever situation was in the project. If you look at it all together, that percentage is probably a bit too high. Because in my view, if you had too many change requests on a project, whether it was successful is debatable, according to definition, because Agile, you can't compare it to the SDLC process because it's simply not the same thing. Right, so that was the next thing. It needed massive reporting. I mean massive. You will see later on the impact that meetings have on time and waste, okay? But here, methodology that was designed around reporting. And as I said before, there was kingdoms that was built to manage releases. You have release departments, release managers, head of release, and then you would have change controls, and all of these took people that needed to be employed to manage all of this. You had to, within projects, appoint people. Some of the projects I ran was massive projects. I had project administrators that would assist me with gathering information, reporting, etc. And our weekly status meeting was always a big deal, this massive PowerPoint presentation, etc., etc. And I can carry on and become all philosophical about it. The point is, SDLC was designed around having meetings and management and control. So here's the thing, why did it change? So SDLC was time consuming, it wasn't flexible, it came at a very high cost. In some projects you would have months, if not longer, of just your feasibility stage to figure out and to analyze all the information before you present a business case for approval. It had a rigid process. The process involved with SDLC was always really strict governance. Anything that changed, you needed to go for approval. There's now change, wada. And the irony of all of this is the plan was nearly never realistic. And if you think back 2 slides, who compiled the plan? Who compiled all this information? It was the sponsor, the project manager, etc. The real experts was still to become part of the team. The real experts would only be employed or appointed after the approval of the funding and the project kickoff. Only then you would go and get the resources, the people, to get the job done. And these guys were actually the real experts. So the plan was never realistic because the people that made the plan had to really use their imagination and think ahead of just what can happen, what is the possibilities, etc. Now, of course, it's logical the plan will change, because the more detailed requirements you get and the detailed design is done, you find out more about the project, you find out more about what you're doing, things will change. It's logical. So why waste all that time? But anyway, let's get into it. Control was the focus. And people will debate with me on this and say, no, it wasn't. I am actually really convinced that control was the focus. So please don't step over the time duration. Don't step outside scope. If you trigger this, there needs to be a change request. Please just don't do stuff that you're not supposed to do. Put your, get into the tunnel, only do that. So there was a lot of control that was the focus. Output of information. For example, business requirement documents would be standardized. It must contain the following information. I would get into organizations where there were templates designed, and according to the Center of Excellence for that specific department, the information supplied in that document had to be at that standard. Whether it's relevant often didn't matter. It's really, the focus was at the wrong place. The plan was driven from the top down. So the challenge with that is the top-down idea means the person that the sponsor would often use the stick of I'm accountable and therefore you shall. The problem is it's one person at the top whose idea and concept gets forced down onto the experts. Ironically, the experts would often disagree, but they will say nothing because they are in a robotic state, and we'll get to that in the next point. What do I mean with robotic state? What you have is you have expert people sitting in your team that actually knows what to do, how to do it. Whether it's software development, whether it's customer facing, wada, doesn't matter. These people are the experts. But they are not allowed to give their opinions because there's a plan, there is a scope, and this is what you're supposed to do, and it's all coming down from one person at the top pushing it down on the rest. Not a very great idea if you want to innovate. Now, Agile is more focused on delivery. It's flexible, it comes at a fixed cost because you've got fixed teams, nothing unsure about the cost. There's less process involved. The plan would accommodate change, and enabling teams is the core focus of management. The plan is not driven from the top in detail, high level yes, but from the bottom. And the team is the experts, and they are respected for being the experts. Why is new better? The old. The plan gave a false sense of security and safety. Nothing real in what that was. There was no real security and safety in that plan that was driven downward. Change took a lot of costly time to get approved. Innovation would be old when it landed. So you go through all the rigmarole. In some cases, I had months before I would get my money. Then I would wait 3 months to just get into onboard the resources I need, etc., etc. By the time your project starts, somebody else in the market already launched the product. Teams were treated as resources. Okay, resources. That word is like sickening. It's people. So the robotic state. Plan was driven by individual commitments, not reality. So you would have all these people, the sponsor, the project manager, all these people making this fantasy plan, then presented with timelines, and they already got this commitment made. The experts that were supposed to do the job, they weren't involved yet. They just simply inherited. Now, I'm going to just step away from the presentation for a second. You can have 2 expert software developers. Both is excellent at coding. Both those experts, there is absolutely no way they code at the same speed. There is no way that they are at the exact same level of coding. So you can give both COBOL or .NET or whatever you want to give them. The chances of them developing the same thing in the same time is not very high. I don't know if that carries through the point. But let's say this dude can code a login page in 1 hour. This guy will take a week. Both experts, nothing wrong with them, but this guy's coding faster than this guy. That's for the login page. Imagine you have to build an entire e-commerce website. One with this guy, one with this guy. Both experts, both senior programmers. How on earth are you going to get those estimations 100% right before you start? It just doesn't make sense. And that's where Agile makes sense. A lot of time was wasted on planning in the good old days. I mean, really, you had to do detailed analysis, system analysis, data analysis. There was all kinds of analysis that you had to do just to get input or the necessary information to get your plan to action. Accountability was treated as a stick. The new way, individual drive delivery based on own ability and skill, like with the example I just used. Individual as part of a team is more driven to succeed. There's nothing like peer pressure. To say, I'm going to drive those people to deliver, you're living a dream, because all you're going to do is trigger excuse management. And it's nothing wrong with it, because you are now pushing this person to deliver. That person's only retaliation or only option is to defend themselves if necessary. In the new way, the way it works is, I know my team members are working their bums off, so I'm also going to carry weight. I need to be part of the team, and to make sure they succeed, I must succeed. That peer pressure is much more powerful than someone shouting from the top down. Individuals as part of a team is more driven to succeed. Innovation is possible because everybody has a voice, and the teams are treated as people. The plan is driven from experts upwards. Delivery happens faster and more often, and change is expected. So it's not like, ooh, there's a change request coming and we are now all in shock. Ooh, there's this big change request. I remember as a project manager, that was probably the thing I was really looking up to. I couldn't, the moment a change request was triggered, I would pull my hair out. It was like a real big drama in my life. And management's focus is on enabling teams. This is incredibly important. Our current project world, if we look at our environments, and I want to bring this, just want to hook it again. We are talking about meetings in the end of the day, and just remember, this part is where I'm just setting that building blocks to where I'm going with this presentation. Now, I want to talk about two things that might be used, terminology that might be used outside. These are my own definitions. It might be different from other people, if they even exist. I haven't Googled them or anything. But there's two types of agile that's absolutely poisonous. The one is false agile and the other one is fake agile. I want to quickly talk about false agile. False agile is project methodologies that would call themselves agile. They will even name it in their name, but they're not. They are not agile. The moment you put people in like guardrails or something, you put them into a space and you say, okay, that's the road you must take, the chances are you are in a false agile environment. Then you get fake agile. Now, fake agile is often something that people verbally use. They will throw the lingo, they will constantly talk about this and that about agile, and they will throw that lingo. That's the big thing, the lingo. What that means is they don't understand what they're talking about. They keep on talking about agile terminologies in the wrong context and don't even realize it. And this is often the case in the executive level or senior management level. And they still need to transform or to transition into the real agile state. The problem with those two, false and fake agile, is it often causes separation in methodology, which means that your top side of the business, your management side, functions still in a waterfall type environment where there's a lot of management and control demanded from the bottom, which is now agile and running in different environments. Completely different things are required there, so the two don't speak to each other. And what you often find is there's a management layer in between that needs to translate what's happening in agile into waterfall language, which is, by the way, not even possible, not even by a long shot. There's a lot of false information, a lot of misinformation being provided. Right, changing methodology environment that is in a state of schooling. Now, why I'm bringing that up is when we just introduced Agile in South Africa, we didn't really have experts in Agile that was working in a scaled environment. So large, big projects and large, big Agile initiatives. Those guys didn't exist. So what the organizations did is they would go to the market and see who class themselves as Agile experts. Bring those guys in for a talk and they will start discussing Agile and talk about it as if they are talking to an audience that has a very small organization. The problem with Agile presented in that way was the organization had to make certain changes or adapt to certain issues they would constantly get in terms of the size of the organization, interdependencies between initiatives, all kinds of stuff. But there was also stuff said like a business analyst must become a scrum master. I still remember sitting in one of the large financial institutions where a lady said that, and I nearly passed out. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Two different things, guys. Scrum master, business analyst, not the same thing. It is not because of knowledge or skill. Just making that statement means you don't understand what Scrum Masters do. Also, the current environments that we're working in still have that time constraints, and I want to pull out my hair sometimes because there's always this, okay, but you have to do it in this time. Guys, if you didn't do any detailed planning before, which by the way is already a challenge, how can you put time constraints in an agile environment? Everyone wants to help or save the agile projects or agile initiatives, and there's this constant interference. Everyone needs us to succeed, you know. Oh, we're so important that they're constantly there to help. Now, the problem with help or save and need to succeed, what's the next step is meetings. Managers need to be informed, need to have constant information provided to them about the state. What is the status of this initiative? Okay, so that's what managers do. The information must come to them, supplied to them by other people, team leads, supervisors, managers, whatever you want to call them, need to come to the higher manager to come and tell them this is what's happening. And we're going to have a look at what that impact can be. And everyone in those meetings have an opinion. It's constant debates, it's constant show presenting your knowledge and skill and expertise to everybody else, and it's this huge show and drama that happens a lot, and it doesn't really help to deliver. The experts not even sitting in that meeting, don't know what is being discussed in that meeting, and thank goodness they're not there because they're doing actual work. But that is one of the problems with meetings. Now, if you tap into the Entinology advantage, which we are looking for in the entire Entinology course, we are basically activating a few things. Now, this is not a selling point. I want you to rather look at the bullets in terms of what do you want to strive for to reduce meetings. The first one is competent team members. You need to be able to trust your team members. You need to be able to know that if you give them work to do, they will actually get it done. Or if you give them a problem, they'll get it solved. You also need a competent leadership. Now, I don't say management. There is a difference. Managers manage, but managers can be leaders, but leaders, they just earn that position, if you like. The difference is leaders make people better at what they are, and managers try and manage and control them. You need to be obsessed with that constant improvement. Your process, your working way of working, the administration you do, you need to be obsessed, constantly driving that improvement. Then delivery needs to be tangible. You need to provide value faster than anyone else, whether it's a competitor external or whether it's inside. Within a team, you want to drive that value as fast as possible. And then no bastardization of methodologies. Guys, methodologies exist for a reason. Never compete waterfall with agile, and within agile Kanban with Scrum. Don't compare the two. If you get some kind of initiative, there's some cases we need to execute it agile, and there's some cases we need to execute it in a waterfall manner. Methodologies are there for a reason, not to be competed against each other. Now, how do you go about this? First of all, you make use of your advantages. Then take personal responsibility within your team. Remember, trust is earned through transparency. So you need that transparency to be there. The only way transparency is enabled is by an agile mindset. And that agile mindset needs to be part of your management as well. Not just the team down at the bottom that's actually grinding and delivering. Responsibility is owned. Participation equals enabling. So if people don't participate, you're not enabling the squad, you're not enabling your organization, you're not enabling innovation. You can actually continue saying you're not enabling. But if you participate, and if everybody participate, then that's a difference. Now, the participation one is important for managers especially, and need to understand that their mentality brings a certain value to the table when they rock up at meetings. Next one here is the use of our tools. So if we have Monday.com or Jira or whatever you want to use, there's all kinds of software tools that you can use. Use it properly. Team members within that squad need to respect one another enough to utilize the tools that you've got the best possible way, because that is one of the key recipes of reducing meetings. That will enable everybody else to know what is really happening in the initiative that you're busy with. It also enables flow, and you need to be focused on enabling flow. Flow is important, and I'm going to discuss that a little bit later in the presentation. Then you need to enable autonomous squads. Guys, the autonomous squads one is such a big thing. Everybody talks about it, but nobody does it. And you listen to managers in meetings. We enabled autonomous teams. And guys, that's lingo, that's just false things. Autonomous teams is not something you report on. It's DNA, it is personality within the squad. It's just a culture that you cannot talk about. It just happens. Autonomous teams. One of those things that people talk about a lot. The keys to the success is understand that your entire team needs you to do your part. So you can't sit with one flat tire on the car. Everybody needs to do their part. Bring your A game because you are that good. If you are not that good, then you start running the game of perception management. So bring your A game, Be prepared. If there's planning needed every sprint start, you need to do some sprint planning prior as an individual, what work you want to commit to for that sprint. Go and do it. Don't rock up at a sprint planning session not knowing what you're doing. Understand that efficiency is holistic and not just writing software. I get it a lot that I can find this arrogant people that think that their job is the most important one. It's not. You're part of a team. Everybody's contributing. Understand that each of us has a role to ensure that all of us succeed. It's like a rugby team or a soccer team or a hockey team. Everyone in that team works together to win. And you need to understand that. And we also always need to focus on enabling each other. All of these are keys to the recipe of successful reducing meetings. The next screen, we're talking about rhythm, momentum, and flow, and how those are enablers. The one I want to park on a little bit is rhythm. You will notice that on the slideshow that I present to you, rhythm is the people that's dancing, and under it, it doesn't say rhythm, it says planning. And that's for a deliberate reason. Rhythm is not the way you want to deliver at. Remember, rhythm is constant, doop, 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 the same rhythm, which is wonderful. What you want to strive for is momentum. And that's the snowball that you will see at the bottom of the presentation. You will see that the flow that I've symbolized with water pipes is where I'm talking about stories. Now, stories need to be broken down in small chunks, as small as you possibly can, to make sure that the flow isn't blocked together. It's not one big chunk of work that boom, land in production all at once when a release happens every 3 months. You want to break it up down in smaller pieces so you can land more often, faster. If you can land in production every hour, wonderful. That's something to strive for. If you land in production every day, that's also wonderful. But you will notice an hour and a day is not equal in length, and therefore rhythm doesn't really apply to that. What does apply there is momentum. What builds momentum is experience, is maturity. Now, one of the things that's important with rhythm is planning needs to happen at the rhythm. The moment you break rhythm for planning, you kind of sit in a situation where your planning never works out. Now, if you look at QBRs or the 3-month planning cycle, that's the ideal time to plan objectives or high-level detail of what you want to land in the next 3 months. If you look at that cycle, it helps your team to go and do their detailed planning, which they commit to per sprint. So that needs to happen at a rhythm, and people need to be knowing when that happens in order to get the momentum going. So the rhythm is key to planning, momentum is key to delivery. So where do meetings fit in this whole thing? I want to put this picture in front of you of an example that I want to use, and please, it's simply an example. It's the only way I can think of to just ram in the consequences of management and control. The CEO of an organization calls 5 of his top executives into a room and he says, guys, I want a status update of all the projects in the bank, of all the projects in the insurance company, of all the projects in my medical insurance company. I want all these projects to report status upwards. Now, let's say it's only 5 executives, and you can already see a picture, because if you use your own point of reference, you will probably already pick up, okay, there's a lot more executives at top level than just 5, but let's say it's just 5. Those executives go to their divisional executives or senior managers or general managers, whoever's reporting into them. And let's say each of them have 5 managers reporting into them. So we're at level 1, 5 executives. At level 2, where they now call the meeting to inform those people, guys, the CEO wants a status update, which means I want a status update. They go away and they go and tell their managers, guys, our general manager, our executive, they want a status update. And we just go 5 levels deep on that. So let's say it stops at the project managers or whoever runs the lower level of management. So it's 5 people, 5 levels deep. What happened in effect, and let's say all of these meetings are an hour long, is the CEO's request that he gets a status update just triggered 781 people to be in a meeting for an hour just to hear their bosses needs a status update. Now, if you think I'm stupid and this is silly, I want you to just picture this. If I need to give a status update, it means somebody needed to spend time on laying out a template of what the CEO will want to see. Somebody had to go and spend time on distributing that template. Every person that received the template needed some time to understand what they now need to do. They needed to prepare an agenda. They then had to present a meeting where they get their team together and say, guys, we need to prepare a report that looks as follows. It needs to contain the following information. Now, I can already pick up the debates in those meetings, and they get all their experts in and say, guys, I need an update. Right. What happened now was your experts that was actually doing work is now called into meetings just to give the status update to the CEO. Now, I hope you understand this is just one status update. Let's say it's monthly, or let's say it's quarterly. What is happening in your organization at this moment, and who is triggering those meetings? Now, I want to ask this question with all honesty. How often do you need to report status in a management meeting? And how often does the value that you provide in that meeting reach the CEO? How much sanitizing, perception management is happening, massaging of information is happening all the way upwards to the CEO. So, CEO, did you get an honest, transparent report? Just think about that. Now, the Entinology approach around this is if you utilize methodology correctly and you've implemented a wonderful process of work in your organization, you've got the right tools and all of that, it should look more or less like this. Now, Entinology uses the term deuces for all the people that does the high-level planning every 3 months in Kibos or whatever. The deuces are people like product owners. If you have agile PMs, it will be agile PMs. If it's technical product owners, you will have technical product owner in there, probably engineering lead. But it will be all the people that's not really grinding and coding and doing work that's there. They're more there for as the experts, as the people to go to for guidance and that take the lead. These are the people that will form part of your deuces. Now, each type of project is different, so your deuces can often be different as well. If you're launching a new innovation project, it can even include your advertising and marketing team. It doesn't really matter. It's about what is useful for what you have to do. Now, these guys do high-level planning. They will probably talk about the objectives they want to achieve in the next 3 months. They will add it to the activity tool. So the activity tool in this case, let's use Jira as an example. They will add those objectives to Jira. The POCLUC will then break down the planning of the objectives into segments. Now, I'm going to try for people that's still doing waterfall, use that as the example. A business requirement document. would be a key segment that you will identify. You will allocate it to a person. Whether that person is the lead, that will then divide the work up into other business analysts within his squad, doesn't matter. But that chunk of work, he owns it. He can now go away and say, the business requirement document would need the following standard. In other words, the artifact will need the following content. That content will then be planned and dissected into smaller chunks like sprints. Within sprints, he will probably break it down further. So it will be, for example, to achieve this artifact, I need to review documentation, I need to review other designs, I might need to review the scope statement or the project charter, we're talking waterfall here. Probably need to review the enterprise architecture of the organization. So I also need to compile a stakeholder list. That will be the next activity. That will take me 2 or 3 hours to do. I need to then compile a pack which I can then utilize when I have a workshop. I need to meet the following people, etc. That is the type of work they will break down. All of this work will then be listed by the squads, by the potluck, into this tool called, let's say, Jira, for example. Now what's wonderful is the moment you get that flow right, the management team, the CEO that don't need to call a meeting anymore, can now go and be informed. He doesn't need to get informed. He can be informed, he can source the data, the information he requires, he can simply source it from that tool. I don't know if it's resonating with you, but believe me, this can work at any scale. In fact, it's the best way of working at scale. So in short, what I've done here was basically present to you something that's probably confusing to some people. But if you can understand that meetings are introduced in organizations for the pure simple reason to manage and control in the majority of times, then you already understand a lot. I would like to make another video about meetings. This time I want to discuss what meetings do not offer. Because here's the thing about meetings. When you go and do research about how to get less meetings, what people tell you is you need to have an agenda. They will also tell you that you need to invite the right people to the meeting. Now again, you can go and look at this in very simple ways, that if I want a meeting about a new mobile app we're developing, I probably need my lead developer in that team. I need the data guy in there. You can go like crazy, invite the whole mountain of people and end up with a wonderful agenda, but end up with a meeting with 30 people where only 3 or 4 people are talking. That is a waste of time. It's not a meeting. You will also have a situation where you will have a meeting where that meeting leads to more meetings. Because during that meeting, wonderful, insane knowledge and skill came to the front that said, we are concerned about this. There is this risk. There is this wara. And it just goes crazy. Guys, you're wasting time. Get into the job and get it done. Start coding. The guys that's doing the coding are the experts. They don't need to be controlled and managed. Because you're a manager doesn't mean you are better. The guy that actually does the job doesn't need to sit in your meeting to talk about stuff. If that is why you've got a meeting, you've got it wrong. So, the first rule of a meeting is, don't have a meeting. The second rule of a meeting is, if you do have a meeting, that meeting must only exist for one reason, and that is delivery. There's a crisis, we've got a prod incident, we need to discuss it. That's a meeting. Not, I want a report, a status report. What's the progress on this or that? Guys, I've got to present this presentation tomorrow to the management as part of our monthly report back. Can you please provide me this info? That's not a meeting. You're wasting time. Your guys, they're busy delivering. Meetings that take place in organizations should have a tangible outcome. If you stick to those rules, you're sticking to the right rules. Personally, if I'm invited to meetings and I feel that that meeting is going to waste my time, I decline it. I force the person to engage me and convince me that meeting is important. Because next time he books a meeting with me, he's going to think very clearly before he books it. How on earth am I supposed to get work done if I'm talking nonsense in a forum? If I'm talking nonsense in a meeting? So guys, that's the rule. So, if you look at the culture of an organization, your first problem is management need to change. Management need to get into the new world of doing things. The agile world, innovation, entrepreneurial world. We do things or we have meetings for a reason. Not because you are important and need to be informed. That's your duty to be informed anyway. Management, your role is enabling your teams to deliver. Your role is, if your team has a blocker, to go and clean it for them. That's your role, nothing else. Not having meetings is the first rule. The second rule is a meeting must deliver tangible outcomes, something you can touch, delivery. Okay, guys, I hope that was good. I don't know if there's any questions. You can visit my website on Entinology.com. You can ask me a question there, or you can even go to Twitter and you can follow me there, or on X, depending on what you want to call it these days. You're also free to follow me on LinkedIn. Hook up with me. You can ask me a question. You can send me a mail. I will definitely respond. Thank you, guys. Have an awesome day.